you guys are building out your projects. And for those of you who are just coming in for the workshops, welcome. Why don't we start by just having our panelists introduce themselves, and they're really here, as we said, this panel is very informal. Ask them whatever you want. They have a ton of experience. They're happy to talk to you about it, advise you in any way they can. But yeah, and let's welcome them.
My name is Jonathan Holmes. I'm invited to be here. We're a full-service marketing creative agency. We help a lot of startups. We work with manufacturing companies, and I've been involved in developing a lot of branding, a lot of user interfaces, and also a lot of technology. And so one of the things I always ask somebody that was going on here is like, who are your customers, what are you trying to do, and how are you going to build revenue? I have to know what a company's goals are. I have to know what their annual revenue is. I have to know how they're going to talk to the market and what they're doing. So really, from our standpoint, we're really trying to make sure that we ask people the right questions and they understand their business model. And a lot of times, I have people who have pipe dreams. Back in the day when I was in the web business, it was like people were just coming in creating entities that didn't really have any business model behind it. And so always looking at that. So I really enjoy being here, enjoy giving back. So any questions I can help with, I'll be glad to.
Hi everybody, I'm Dario. I started my company, Majeure, right out of college. I finished here at Emory at Majeure. And we started it as a lifestyle, media, and sports company for various creative projects. And our biggest project now is a reality show called The Successors, which is based in Monte Carlo. And so I'm going to film you guys doing all your stuff if it gets really wild.
My name is Toly Shilman. I'm a business strategy manager with Intellimedix, a founder of Complicase, and also a managing partner at Brand Jocks. Lots of things going on, right? My background really is a little odd. I've done a little bit of everything, a lot of consumer packaged goods, a lot of branding, a lot of identity stuff. But through all the stuff that I've done, my biggest learnings have been that, everybody is always after what's flavor of the month, what's popular. Oh, look, Snapchat's hot right now. Oh, they're getting $3 billion. The one thing I'll tell everybody from the get-go, they have zero revenue. In 2 years, you will not hear of Snapchat. I don't know, whatever happened to Snapchat. Because the reality is, all of you who use Snapchat use it because there's no advertising. There's nothing obtrusive or different. And that's why whenever I talk to startups, and my goal for my own startups, if I don't have a way to make revenue from day one, I have a real problem on my hands. Because as soon as, guess what, venture capitalists, they don't care about you. They care about their money. When they put their money into your company, they're already looking at ways to get it back. And that means that they're going to be asking you questions. And I'm here to kind of help out, frame things and really move in the right direction, hopefully. Looking forward to this.
Hey guys, my name's Ames. I have made a career of reinventing myself. I'm now into my whatever chapter. Between banking and then going back to grad school, getting a business degree. Ended up in Atlanta, by chance ended up at Coca-Cola, and ended up there for the next 10 years in customer management, kind of on the operations side, as a regional operations manager. And after 10 years of that, it was up to here with the corporate world and said, I got to do something different. So I raised my hand during a round of layoffs and said, pick me, which was not easy to do. They take good care of you there, and it's a good place. But left there and decided I wanted to do small business. So I landed in Savannah and worked with 6 different companies, kind of managing the day-to-day side, working with entrepreneurs to get them focused on what they do best, get them out the door using that passion to drive their business and take all the crap off their plate, to do the back of the house stuff. So I've seen lots of good things, lots of bad things, learned a lot. Every time I did another company, it was a different industry, so I've learned and been exposed to a lot of different stuff and keep learning new languages and technology and so on. But I finished that up in about 2011 and said I want to do my own thing finally. And I just haven't figured out what that thing is. I have several ideas that I'm cooking around, but none of them are kind of going to be the next big thing. So I settled back in Atlanta, launched my business, which is the bizgarage, which is a business coaching practice, to finally do for myself what I've been doing for others for 30 years. So just getting that off the ground and getting involved in the Atlanta community. And this is my 5th kind of hackathon thing, and love it. I see a lot of things coming together in the Atlanta market and the startup community. So it's an exciting place to be. Happy to use my experience to help you guys round out your business ideas. You'll see me floating around over the next couple of days, so let me know. Just grab me.
I'm Jonathan. I am the co-founder of co-founder of online flash sales site for home improvement. We're still a young company, but I am the tech side of that. I've been doing web development for a while now, I guess about 10 years in different aspects, running teams, being the developer, being a co-founder now, and that's the short of that.
If anyone has any questions, this is, feel free to ask.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'd like to know more about the business because that sounded really interesting. And then I also have a question for Mike.
Okay, so we do flash sales, kind of like a Guild, Zulily, kind of that aspect, but we focus on home improvement, which those other guys dabble in here and there, but that's our main focus. And basically, it's the same concept. We run short sales of overstocked items for home improvement and just turn it over really quickly, and there's lots of room to kind of save money for the consumers and make money ourselves. We're about 6-7 months old. I mean, we've been working on it longer than that, but full speed ahead for about 6 or 7 months. And it's been going good, been doing great. It's coming down now, less tech and more marketing and signing vendors up and getting products, and it's tough to run that many sales that quick, so you have to have a lot of backflow.
I need to talk to you afterwards because I see a lot of synergy.
Okay, yeah.
To that, what was your hardest part? Getting the customers to come to your site, or getting the vendors to get you to get the goods?
Vendors,
Yeah.
by far. Mainly because it's one of those chicken and egg things, because you don't have any customers at first, but the vendors want you to have customers.
Sure.
So it's almost like, oh yeah, we have tons of customers, so just let us have your products.
Microsoft it, basically?
Yeah, almost. With some people you do. A lot are very eager, but you may not necessarily get the overstock, with the good margin stuff. You get stuff that you can't even really put online. So that was the toughest part, finding good vendors that, would jump on board with you early and still give you that room to kind of make money.
But you found that the customers came willingly and almost immediately?
Not necessarily immediately, but we had a good marketing team, as Sarah knows. And we tried, that was probably the fun part, was, the experimentation. It's like, okay, let's try Facebook and see what we can do there. Let's try Twitter, let's try email, let's try deal sites. I mean, it was just kind of throw a hypothesis out there, see what worked, and then just hammer home at that guy and get the customers to come in.
I mean, who was your target demographic?
It's changed a lot, I think. Right now, the best demographic we have is men looking for tools, good deals on tools. The women are hard to catch in home improvement stuff.
Sure.
I mean, they're looking for fixtures or things, stuff to hang on the wall, fixtures, kind of more aesthetic kind of things, and the men are looking for more hardware, tools, hammers, things like that. So it's tough with flash sales because the sales only last a day or two, and you don't want to have an inundation of product, so you have to be careful with what's on the site and who you market to, and kind of make all that work together.
Did you find social media to be a viable marketing tool?
Sometimes. Sometimes it was. I mean, we definitely got a lot of traffic from Twitter and Facebook, but not a lot of conversion, I don't think. That was the tough part, because the message would spread, but you wouldn't necessarily have much control over who will it spread to, unless you, kind of purchase certain ads and things like that. But that was the tough part with social media.
So what were the most successful avenues in that part?
The most successful we've had is like deal sites, like dealnews.com, things like that, that people go to that site and, to catch deals, and then they would have exactly what they wanted to find and know where to get it and know what the price was and know that it was, what they wanted. So those are the most successful we've had so far. Not to say that the other's not a good avenue, it's just where we are right now. That's good.
A more direct way to
Yeah.
connect to the consumer.
So this question I guess can be answered by anybody, but Joel, you mentioned that Instagram doesn't have like a steady revenue, basically, no way to gain revenue. So like, what would you suggest, I guess, as a way to sort of build that revenue? Like, what are some techniques, I guess, or is there any business model you guys could see them adopting that would make it a revenue generating business?
I think it's not really, you know what's odd about Instagram, and I think this could go on to any image sites, and that's why I always tell everybody, you're going to come up with something that engages consumers, you need to have what's the value add for them, because at a certain point it runs out of steam. It's really up to the user. I mean, what Instagram can do is they may be able to create more rankings and more suggestions, things to follow, and things of that nature. This is where there's an opportunity, for instance, imagine you're Coca-Cola, right? If you just put up a Coca-Cola bottle, that's uninteresting. But if you come up with interesting imagery, or a lot of people on Instagram are fascinated by the vintage filters and all these things, the visuals, nostalgia is powerful. Those are the sort of things. So it's honestly up to the companies to create the kind of content that an Instagram or any of these other networks can really monetize and create the right thing. And what Instagram would have to do is come up with a revenue model for themselves that also makes sense for Coca-Cola to pay for. Because otherwise what's going to happen is, okay, we created this amazing photo, we paid this photographer, we retouched, created a new campaign, did all these things, but we got 3 followers. Like, where is the deal? So I think what's really the problem is an Instagram, or even let's look at Snapchat that has 0 revenue right now. And honestly, will have 0 revenue. So they better pray to get bought. As soon as there's too much advertising on a network that people use, they immediately back away from it. Facebook has discovered that. They had the first drop in teenage users in the entire existence in this past quarter. And without having any concrete evidence, I can bet my money it's because a lot of teenage users slowly started losing the engagement because they get inundated by these sponsored posts all the time. And that's one more thing that reduces the engagement.
But they were quite successful with it, because that's actually an example that I was thinking about bringing up. They were very successful with that. I mean, even interestingly, over a long period of time without having any advertising channel to their users directly, and they were able to raise an incredible amount of money. I still find it a miracle how they did that.
But you have to understand that I always thought that they're the exception, not the rule. And I always warn people with startups, like, it would be great if every single one of you used the next Snapchat, next Instagram, etc., or even Tumblr, look, $1 billion company, which had 13 million in revenue. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? There's no potential for $1 billion in Tumblr. And but the only reason Yahoo bought them is because Yahoo needs the traffic. But that's the thing. Raising money is not the end-all be-all. And I caution everybody, because for every single one of these great companies out there that are going to be like, oh my God, we're being valued at $2 billion. Life is awesome. Venture capitalists, some of them are very nice guys, but they're not investing their own money. They're investing money from other rich people who put the money into funds. So they don't have as much of an emotional stake in your success. They want to get their money back, they want to make a profit, but let's imagine you have a great idea and you have a vision you're extremely passionate about, right? As soon as a venture capitalist comes in, they're going to take 51% of your company. This is why I always tell people, you have to have a revenue model. Why? Because the most powerful thing for a startup can do is tell a venture capitalist no. It's incredibly powerful. The only way you're going to, because what the venture capitalists do, they give you just enough money to hang yourself. So let's imagine, oh, here you are, a good example, like any of these companies, but really a perfect example is a company called Collar. I know nobody ever heard of them. A few years back, Collar was the next great thing. It was going to dwarf Instagram and become, it got $40 million in funding before a line of code was written. Oh, I'm not kidding. Why? Because it had some really interesting characters involved who were like, I guess superstars in the programming world. Collar shut down on December 31st, 2012. That was 2 years after the 40 million was raised. They give you enough money to hang yourself. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a revenue model, they're going to want their money back sooner or later. Twitter is a perfect example. Twitter's losing money every year. They're going to lose about 180 million this year, roughly. That is not a successful business. It's fantastic that it's worth 26 billion, and for all those guys' sakes, I hope they sell like crazy and cash out a good portion of it. Because the reality is at a certain point, people expect to see a profit. And when they don't, there's a question to be raised. And what happens? They change CEOs. So if you're a founder, you're a CEO, it's your baby, it's your creative vision. It was Jack Dorsey's creative vision, it was Evan Williams' creative vision. Neither of them were CEOs. Both of them were removed from being CEOs, not voluntarily. And guess who did it? It was the venture capitalist. I'm not saying it's all bad, I'm just saying, right now our culture seems to reward people for raising money, more so than for creating a sustainable business. And I think it's a problem because 80% of all startups fail, and of the 20% that are quote-unquote successful, less than 1% are those kind of companies. The rest are middling, the rest are functional business that go from day to day and try to figure out their monthly. And you know, the hire, fire, and do all the things that a normal business does. So you have to start your business with the intention that this is what's going to be happening. And maybe our idea is that phenomenal that it's going to lead to that next level. But don't count on raising money, count on you making money.
I think a lot of these big raises they're betting. You know, they're betting on the potential that somebody will figure out a way to monetize them, to develop a revenue model behind it. And they just don't want to be left out. You know, they can get traffic, they can do some things with it, get some attention in the meantime, but sooner or later, there's got to be value someplace, or all that stuff falls apart. And you know, the investors lose, the venture capitalists just go to the next deal. So, like I said, when you build a model, you've really got to think about where am I adding value, how are we going to make money, and then you know the mechanics of how you raise money, if you need to raise money, come into play. But it's a lot easier to play if you're not just the next whiz idea without a real model behind it. So.
And to add to that as well, I think now what you're trying to do is to build relationships with investors. And I know especially in the film, independent film and TV, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build relationships with a bunch of investors so they can finance our future projects. And in tech, I don't know how it is in tech, the guys who are going to talk more about that, but I think it's the same thing. You're trying to show that you can add value. And what we did with the successors is we got a micro budget, and we added so much value that people in the top Hollywood agencies, they couldn't believe that it was such a low budget. And now our investors actually want to give us more money for any project that we have because they're like, wow, you guys added so much value. So I think that's a huge aspect of, you know, how these trends are gonna go, building those relationships.
Jonathan, I believe you talked about before the whole idea of lean. Like, you know, the obsession with, I don't know how many of you read The Lean Startup. It's a little obsessive. It's a good idea, but what I'm saying is every single startup is business and the principles of it are cool. But just understand, your business is unique from every other business. You are a unique snowflake, you know what I mean? Your unique personality is going to show in your business and the way it's run and the way you pay things and the way things are done. But understand that this obsession with people like, how much money? Oh look, you raised 2.6 million. And of course there's an interview immediately. Oh, how did you do it? That's not, their tactics are not going to work for you. But the great part is, you know what? For instance, the company I'm with, Intellimedix, we're a biotech startup in Atlanta, which is extremely rare. There is no biotech startups in Atlanta. It's like being a tech startup in North Dakota. It's not, it doesn't make sense. But here we are, right? And we have a very good setup. We just finished building a lab in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is the Silicon Valley of biotech. Because just like anybody else, you have to have an office in the place where it belongs. But now, for the first time, we're doing our fundraising. We don't have a revenue, but with biotech, it's a little different. You don't need revenues. You need a model that makes sense. You need a plan. We waited to start raising our money until we had a plan. Because a good idea, well, you'll get a bunch of VCs who have, you know, a few $100 million, so what's a couple of million to them? They'll throw it at you, and that's fine, but they're going to have expectations, board seats, all this stuff. You're not prepared to give up. Now, our first round, we're raising strictly from strategic people. We're looking to solve epilepsy. So could we find strategic people whose family has been impacted by epilepsy? You'd be surprised how many people, no matter whether you're solving a disease or providing this kind of service, who would have a much more emotionally vested interest in making you successful. Versus a VC who you're just another notch in their portfolio. And you know, they're going to come into your board. Instead of you working on your great idea, you're going to be working on the Excel sheet to show them in the model how your valuations changed. Because that's all they care about. But a good angel investor, a good strategic investor, fantastic. And I know it's sexy when there's like Andreessen Horowitz or any of these big companies, Sequoia Capital, come in. But that comes with a cost. And if you're not prepared to pay that cost, this is why you see a lot of burnouts happen in these things. I guess him first and then you afterwards.
How much do you lose in, I guess, each stage of funding, typically?
Oh, it's all over the place, right? It's all over the place. It's like, here's a
How
good,
much money do you have?
yeah. I'll answer first, but I think these guys might actually even have more insight. I mean, here's a good way for you to think about. There's a venture capital handbook, right? And if it's VC, you're giving up 51% of your company, first round. So whenever you hear somebody got seed capital and it's super excited, wow, they raised first $1 million, that's cool. They probably don't have any much more company. I mean, let's remember, Mark Zuckerberg had 18% of Facebook when all was said and done, or 13, depends on who you ask. The guys at Twitter had 2 or 3%, and 6% for a couple of them. It's the example of you will lose a lot. The difference is, and that's fine, because have 1% of something awesome or 100% of something crappy.
And some of the stars get booted from their own company. I mean, having to see Jobs at Apple first time.
Well, it's a trade-off. What are you getting for that money? I mean, are you getting connections? Are you getting experience? Are you getting distribution? Whatever. So, it should be a fair trade, but, usually you're the small guy in that negotiation. Whether it's your company or not, you're going to probably take a pretty significant hit, unless you're a lawyer and experienced and all the other things.
And have a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
What's your average return on your VC's investment?
Oh my God, it could be anything.
What do you promise? I mean, specifically throughout your company is what have you been promising? What is the rate of return?
But make a point of not promising anything.
Right. But I mean, obviously,
they're betting you'll make a profit at some point.
Yeah, sure.
And 9 out of their 10 deals probably won't. So.
And they don't. I mean, the idea is when you hear about VCs making 40%, here's how it works. You have one Facebook, right, where they put in some money, all of a sudden it became a behemoth. And then you have 150 other startups who absolutely lost a crap load of money. But because Facebook blew up, boom, they have a 40% annual.
So what questions do you feel we should ask if we're presented with that opportunity so to make sure that we don't get screwed?
If you're talking, you're honestly getting screwed. Look. No, it's not bad. It's not bad. Let me explain. No, it's more like this. Try to get your first round away from VCs. Get strategic people. Let's imagine you're making a company that sells bagels. I'd rather have 20 investors, some of whom might be bakers, some of whom might make flour, some of whom might do this, and that, 50,000 a piece to make up my $1 million, than get Andreessen Horowitz coming in who has no strategic or vested interest in my success. They do. They want to see their $1 million turn into $1 billion, but that's the extent of their success they're looking to do. So the number one question is why? If they say like we want to put money in and this is what we think you're worth, do your homework. Obviously, if you're a startup, you might not have money, right? So, but the beautiful part, especially if you're in college, there's a lot of free crap here. Go to your library. My God, the databases you have, you probably have hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's my one regret in life. When I was in college, totally did not take advantage of this. My God, you could get access to every single database that costs thousands upon thousands of dollars a year for somebody like us to get a hold of. You have it for free. Use them. Find out, what are you really worth? Your advisors in your school, especially in, I'm sure in Emory, are all super smart, probably can help you value your company in a snap. But that's the number one thing. Figure out why they want to be a piece of it. What can they bring to the table? I mean, if you're in a fortunate position enough where you can actually make a choice, good. But that's where the revenue comes from. You know AirWatch, the company that's here? They raised 200 mil. That's fantastic. The difference is they're a multi-billion-dollar company already, so it's all good. But they waited a very long time to start raising that kind of money. And by this, the point is that they raised that 200 mil, it's more so for the founders to take the money off the table for themselves. It's almost like a sale. Like here, we're selling 10% of our equity or whatever. Versus, God, we need to make next month's payroll. Desperate. What do you guys think?
I think the biggest thing, like when you're doing anything like that, when somebody will come in and I'll look at agenda, and you think about that from a gender standpoint as far as people that you surround yourself with, is that when you look at a product or a particular company, as far as people that are involved, is that's really one of the acid tests I really try to figure out. Because, okay, so like, are the people around the table, are they interested in building their company, or do they want to build it and sell it? You know, what's the legacy standpoint? And you have to have, it's almost like in any conversation as a marketer or any type, it's got to be pure. And the people around it, you have to be focused on the product and what you're trying to do. Because if you don't have the purity of the people around the team and what you're focused on, then your conversation with your constituents and your product, it's going to be misguided. Like one of my favorite things in the technology community is, you know, it's everybody thinks they're, and I've used this analogy before, they're a center, we're playing for the Hawks. And, you know, I'm 5'9" on a good day, is that people in these startups and around the technology community, it's like be true to yourself, but also as far as your conversation with the space, is that really say who you are and make sure that your product and what you're actually doing has traction, but it has a purity. Because there's a movie that I refer to all the time. It was made here, I'm not saying made here, sorry, but it was about the Southland Civil War. Do you know what it is? Gone with the Wind, right? There's a famous saying in the movie where Rhett and Scarlett are saying, what does Rhett say? Right, I don't give a damn. And that's where, as far as your company and whoever you surround yourself, is you have to look how somebody gives a damn. Either with your company, you're not going to use a pink highlighter on your screen, so you don't give a damn about my product that I'm selling. And also in terms of the conversation, is there passion behind what you're doing? Is it something that you really care about? You know, do you like bagels? Do you like green beans? You know, so it's got to be whether that product actually has a passion. And I love it as a marketer, the whole social media thing. I don't care that you had a piece of chicken for dinner. Okay, it's like everybody thinks I'm gonna build this great company through social media. Well, it's got to be the right conversation. It's got to be what's engagement. How does it impact my life? How do I give a damn? I'm not trying to say this, but in it, it's that like, okay, so like, is it a great restaurant? Is it a great product? Is it going to change my life as a consumer? And if you can't say that, in other words, like from your company as your startup or whatever you're doing, if you feel like that your company can shut down and the world's not going to be impacted, then you don't have enough passion behind it. But if you know what you're doing and you build it to where you're there, you're stellar, you compete, and you give me a differentiator, then you'll be successful. It's really kind of just, it's like be true to yourself and be a differentiator, but also when you throw a value profit all day, like when I work with somebody, I can't say we have 24/7 shipping. I can't say you're this or the customer service is excellent unless on the back end, from an operational standpoint, you're going to deliver that. And that's where you've got to decide kind of what your core values, what your standards are. And like he's saying, as far as the valuation, is that you have people that always want to have a piece of the pie, but it's really how you deal about your integrity, how you deliver your product. It's really who you are as an individual.
Yeah, and if you're going to give up control of the company, I'd rather give it up to my employees than the VCs. So at the end of the day, you know what? One of the most interesting is Words with Friends. That company got sold for 180 million to Zynga. Thank God for them, because obviously Words with Friends fizzled out. But here's the perfect example of how a founder dealt correctly. Up until that point, he actually had to start laying off people. He kept laying people off because they were kind of running out of money. And it was a weird scenario to be in. You have one of the hardest games, but you're not generating enough money to support things. And so they were in a weird construct, what to do next. And then they get the call from Zynga, 180 million bucks. So he literally started backdating the stock options and rehiring people that he laid off so they could get their pieces. Because when he laid off, so when you're co-founding something, be generous with your equity. I'm sure when you're on your private yacht, you're going to cry and say, I could have had another 20 million. But you see what happens when, and it's very holistic, I'm supposed to say this stuff, but the reality is the worst possible thing that can ever happen is if you grow to hate the people you started your company with. Because it's horrendous. And you see like the Twitter thing is a perfect example. Those guys can't stand each other. They can't be in the same room. Evan Williams and Jack Dorsey, there's no friendship there. They both threw each other out of the company at one point or another. To a degree, Facebook, perfect example. Why is Mark Zuckerberg considered a bright young CEO, but also not very well liked? Because he was not a very ethical person. That's just the way he was.
I think it was over in Tuxton, so.
You know, but it's that sort of thing that, I mean, like, you have an opportunity when you're young, and you're in school, but honestly, that's the great part about startups. It's age, not age specific. If you see somebody who's 65 who can add value to your company, they're just as valuable to you as a 21-year-old. But that's the thing, like, you really have to, like, force that conversation. Not what do we ask the venture capitalists so we don't get screwed? You know what to ask. Don't be afraid to ask it. That's the different question. If you're so desperate that you need to make that money, to get that money to keep survival, understand how much is it worth to you. If it's worth you giving up the control of the company, then that's fine. But most of you will probably agree that it's your baby and you probably want to see it a little closer to the end before you start getting into a weird position. Or also, you know, that's why angel investors are so fantastic a lot of the time. You find the right ones, they understand what they're getting into. They're not asking too many questions. They just want to put their $100,000 in and know that, you know, they're or whatever it is, and know that you're gonna be working hard to make it happen. If they trust you, that's all that matters.
What you were saying earlier also, you have to find strategic investors that understand your business, that want to build it with you. That it's hard enough starting out and being an entrepreneur and facing all the pressures that an entrepreneur faces without the investor calling, hey, an investor that doesn't understand the business, that doesn't understand the project, that's not passionate about the project like you are, that's calling, where's my money? And so personally, I was fortunate enough to find investors that are understanding that, well, I still haven't given them back anything. Anyhow, they're understanding, they're still supportive. And so I think that's very important. Find the strategic partners that can take you, that can add value with more than just their money, with their advice, with their contacts, or with just their moral support, or whatever it may be. So that's I think, a hugely important thing than just money.
Someone with like a more specific skill set, so that would be able to help you and benefit you other than just monetarily?
Correct, yeah. For example, one of the biggest challenges we faced was sales and marketing. Well, marketing we actually had to quite well sorted out, word of mouth exploded. But the sales part was really difficult. So if I had to do something again, I would have gotten somebody that's influential in the industry, and I, like you said, would have given up that percentage or whatever else for that person to then push my project further sooner.
Just want to understand real quick, I don't know, did any of you guys go through accelerators or incubators or anything like that? What is your take on it? Somebody who's kind of like after the fundraising process? And I know incubators, well, some accelerators like Angel Pad and Y Combinator, some of those different things. Like, I don't know, are any of you guys developers or anything, or development-based?
He's a developer.
Okay, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of understand, did you guys look at accelerators or incubators when you guys were kind of at the beginning stages of your company, or we didn't even go that route?
We looked at accelerators, we looked at a few around town, and they would have been very beneficial. We didn't end up going with them, but they would have been really beneficial for connections and finding help and getting advice and third parties looking in and kind of giving you that outside perspective. That would have been really beneficial to us.
Yeah, and also the way you gotta look at it, like for instance, if it's not incubators or accelerators, there's also the Founders Institute starting up in Atlanta. I'd strongly recommend you looking into that. Sometimes you just need, you think you have a good idea, but sometimes you need that push in your confidence that I am doing the right thing. And that's really what those things will a lot of times will provide. It's the validation, and it's important because look, we're all seeking validation. That's why we're starting these companies. Let's be clear, who are we kidding ourselves, we think we are all geniuses.
So I'm a finalist for the Founders Institute, but I was debating on whether there would be a solid enough mentor system, because that's one of the biggest benefits to it that there is in Silicon Valley. I mean, do you think there's going to be that same national benefit that there will be in Atlanta starting up right off the bat?
I think there's different. In a way, I hope there isn't, and here's why. I think what makes Atlanta special, we have the most mobile developers per capita in the country, and this kind of shows you how disjointed Atlanta is. We have 90% of our businesses, startups here, are all software as a service, business to business type of deal, yet we're a consumer brand town. Which is odd, right? We have Home Depot, Coca-Cola. So when I think about the Founder Institute, there's going to be some mentors outright. We have enough, even internally in Atlanta, to get a hold of. But I also think that it's just an opportunity to get like-minded people in the same room
And I can almost bet all the money in the world that half the companies that they came in with will not form up, but new companies will, because people, well, you know, it's almost like founder dating.
Yeah.
And I think that's really their advantage, because I think I'm a finalist too for the thing, and that's my interest in it. It's like, look, I've been through the grind a little bit, this and that, but you can never learn enough, and you can always know that, you know, just because they're gonna, the mentor system, I always feel you have to take it with a grain of salt. Unfortunately, a lot of people like, this is the gospel and you have to do it this way. The mentor simply is gonna say, this is what I did, this is how it worked for me. But you're unique and special, and your idea is unique and special, and little pieces of it are going to apply to you, but not necessarily all of it. So that's why, like, I hope it's not too big, because I think if it's all about mentor speaking 99% of the time, it becomes nothing more than a big long lecture series, and less about organic idea creation, ideation, innovation, all that good stuff.
So my question is about creating a product, right? So there are two schools of thoughts. I want to know each one of your thoughts. So one school of thought is to not build anything, go out and validate your idea. You see if you can get customers to pay, like, you know, pre-sell your product even before you have a product. Another school of thought is Steve Jobs says, you know, your customer does not know what they want, right? So what is your each one of your ideas on what do you think?
I'll answer by, I guess I'm kind of old school. It's like, if you're gonna sell me a chicken sandwich, give me a chicken sandwich so I can buy it. At the end of the day, it's when everything I do on a daily basis, unless someone buys something or there's a transaction, then your product means nothing, period.
For me, I think it's a little bit of a combination of the two. So obviously you have to see that there is a certain demand for a product. Concretely with our show, we believe that there is a demand for it. But we also didn't want to do something very similar to what already exists. We wanted to impose our new style and, you know, change a little bit what you see in the Kardashians and stuff like that. We wanted to, you know, make it a little more intelligent, a little more high-end. And, sorry. It's not that difficult. No, it is, trust me. But, so I also believe, yeah, you can always impose something better onto the consumer. So for example, if with TV, with reality TV concretely, you know, the shows are getting stupider and stupider realistically. So if you go by what people are demanding, if we were all cavemen and we were demanding, you know, caveman style shows, there would be no progress. And so for that reason, I think it's a responsibility for a lot of us to innovate and to push better products and higher standards into the marketplace.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same boat. Look, bottom line, if it's a physical product, create the product, or at least a prototype. Better yet, prototype it. So a perfect example of that is the guy who founded Palm Pilot. When he first came up with the idea for the Palm Pilot, it was obviously extremely expensive to just make one off. And forget it, millions of dollars to develop that. He took a wooden block the size of a Palm Pilot, stapled some pieces of paper on it, and carried it in his pocket. He'd pull it out, and each time when he saw a user occasion for him to input a number, to take down an appointment, he'd do it. He kept simulating it until he felt, you know what, I see the viability in this. Then he went through the question and answer process with his friends and other people. Like right now, a perfect example, right? I'm more of a product developer than anything else when I consider myself, and I'm developing a cell phone case. Okay, that's not that original. My cell phone case is also a makeup case. That's a little different. I got a patent on it, in fact. Right? And I haven't made it yet. But I also know that in order for me to validate my concept, I'm going to have to make at least 50 of them. Go into the malls of America and ask women, hey, what do you think? What's wrong with it? And after they play around with it and they tell me what's wrong with it, that's when I go and what's my next steps? Am I raising money through Kickstarter? Am I going to VCs? How am I getting this thing off the ground? But it's very specific to that because I think the usability issue is huge. And it's a big problem. And you know, I was talking to, and John heard this, I was talking about the healthcare.org site. And no matter what your opinions on any of that stuff is, let's consider it this way. They spent $400 million on the site. I bet you they spent $0 on usability and validation. If you can't register, it's not usable, right? So from that perspective, it's a little bit of both. If you're creating a sprocket, you want people to have it, and you're trying to teach, you can impose an idea on people. I mean, Spanx is the perfect idea of imposition.
She felt there was a problem. She knew that her friends were having the same problem. She cut off the feet of her stocking, so that was the initial prototype. And she felt that that was it, but she already had the validation that her friends were having the same issue. So it was that much easier.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it is, what's your motivation in getting into this in the first place? Have you stumbled across a problem that people need solved, or, or are paying for these people? Then you go at it one way. I mean, you go in there and I think regardless, or, you just want to make money or you got an idea for product, then you go into it that way. I think the important thing is you get out there in front of people and you're a good listener and you do something with the feedback that you've got to either tweak it up and ramp up the innovation to it and make it even better than what you're hearing, or you find a real solution for these people, or you're honest with yourself and you say, this is just the average thing, it's not really worth it, and you say, I'm going to move on to the next thing. So I think it really depends on the situation, but I think it's not a solution to hard work and being creative and being a good listener and doing something with that information that you get from getting out there and meeting people.
We wrote a lot of code one time. We wrote about 3 weeks worth of code, and it was so great, and it worked so well. And in that 3 weeks time, one of our, the other founder went out and actually was talking to people. And about the same time we got done, he said, actually we need this. And we had to throw all of our stuff away and start over. And it made us sick to our stomachs how much time and money we wasted on that. And when about 2 weeks of conversation or a week of conversation, we never would have even thought about doing it. So looking back, it sucked, but now we made that mistake. A few conversations can save you a lot of time and money.
So now that we're running out of time, I guess, if you guys could give like one most important advice to our young / student entrepreneurs. Yeah, everyone.
I'll take that one first. As I've been listening to all this, it's easy to get caught up, I think, in the technical and how, how I'm going to make money and this and that and how the thing works. And I think ultimately a lot of folks forget that business fundamentally and even in the bigger picture of life is about relationships. You've got to build relationships and build trust and deliver on those. And I think a lot of companies forget about that. And whether that's relationships internally with your employees, your vendors, your investors, and your customers certainly, as well as your family at home. You've got to think about that part of it. And I think the other thing that makes things different and special and better is to think about that experience that you're creating for these folks and the emotional bond and reaction that they have to working with you or working with your product or interacting with you one or the other. I think that gets lost in all the other, how do I get this done and who do I talk to and how am I going to make money and what size yacht am I going to buy?
Yeah, I kind of, if I had to give my advice, it's actually right now, this is the earliest point. Share your ideas. I know everybody wants to keep it secret. Everybody's going to steal my idea. Listen, if it was so simple, everybody would be doing it. But it's not. And if you don't talk to people about your idea, you'll be blinded by your own BS. The one thing I always learned is never believe your own BS. And this is why it's so incredibly important. Get advisors that you know will challenge you and they're not your yes men. You don't want somebody who's completely starting fights with you all the time, but you always want advisors. That's why I always say, be generous with your equity. 2 or 3% of the company is not going to make any dent for you in the long run, but this is the same person who's going to lend you their ear and tell you, it might not be a good idea, we need to think about this a little deeper. At the same point, share. All of you here, no matter how different your ideas are, you all have the same mindset. And that's amazing, and that's cool. And I wish I had that when I was starting up my first juice bar in college, in RIT. I didn't have that. It was me and my friend. We were scrambling. We didn't have anybody to talk to. You all do, and it's a wonderful thing. And it'd be a damn shame if you guys didn't, if everybody in this room basically didn't exchange emails with each other just to figure out. You never know. Maybe your idea is not that great. Combine the 2 ideas together, you get your next Facebook. And never be afraid. You don't have to tell the person, well, here's the lines of code. But be detailed in your idea, because if you want somebody to give you an honest opinion on it, that's the only way they're gonna do it. At first I was the same way. I was freaked out about like, well, what are you working on? Well, it's proprietary. Well, what the heck are we talking about, right? And the other thing is, NDAs are as good as toilet paper. You sign NDAs with your vendors. You don't sign NDAs with people who are trying to advise you. Why? Because the people are immediately going to think like, what are we talking about here? So just understand that it's all about trust. You think about it. If you're the guy who had 1% of Facebook, you did okay. So did it really matter if you didn't have 50%? Yeah, you know, 50 billion shares. But it really doesn't, right? You're still in a tremendous position. And so if it's a phenomenal idea, you'll still be in a great position.
My two pieces of advice, one would be to select the right team, select people that motivate you. It can be people also that you don't necessarily like working with, but they still motivate you. There are people on my team that I pretty much hate, but but they motivate me and they help the project in that way. That I want to work harder so they don't screw me over or whatnot. So I'll definitely say that they take the right team. Obviously with skill sets, people with skill sets that complement yours, because you don't know everything, and that's all right. But select then people that are specialists in their fields. Secondly, we talk about disruption a lot. We throw around the word all the time now, mostly in the context of let's disrupt this industry by creating this revolutionary product and so on. But I think disruption is also a lot about the process. Sure, people are going to say, okay, to film a TV show or to create an app or whatever, to launch a certain business, these are the steps, 1, 2, 3, to get, venture capital money, get this and whatnot. But it doesn't need to be that way. You're the ones that need to think outside the box if you can go from step 1 to step 6, some people can do that, and you find a new way to raise money or find a new way to market something. So I think disrupt the process. Think of, even if your idea is the same as a billion others, think of a way to do it more efficiently and better than other people. And don't take everybody's advice for granted. Listen to everybody, but figure out your own path. That's my advice.
I think my biggest thing is that I work with a lot of developers. I work with a lot of people in startups. And the thing that I would be a billionaire if the number of people that came to me and said, if you cut me this deal, you'll make millions, okay? So you have people all your life that are going to tell you that they'll make millions or you'll do this and you do that. Surround yourself with people that are winners and they want to have a win-win proposition no matter whatever you do. Make sure their integrity and who they are, that is win-win, where you're not treated any less than someone else. You don't need people around you that are not winners themselves or have to basically cut a deal for them to feel like they've gotten somewhere. And I've learned a long time ago, without being crass, is that my life's a lot better if I don't deal with assholes. And I walked away from many, many, many deals where that guy was a jerk across the table. Because every day I get up, I want to surround myself with positive people. I don't want to surround myself with people that are negative. And so just surround yourself with people that want to be winners and that treat you and value you for your worth. But also, if something smells and sounds too good, a lot of times it is.
And usually people with very fancy names like, Diddy or whatnot. Those deals could tend to be too sexy to be true.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then I would say be ready to get out of your comfort zone. You got to wear a lot of hats when you get started. And my specialty is dev, so I just want to be behind a computer coding. But you really have to do a lot more than just what you're comfortable doing. Make connections, make friends, get a support system, and be ready to do a lot more than just what you're comfortable doing.
Yeah, remember, everything is in your job description. The whole, I'm in the biotech, I was brought in for business strategy. 2 weeks ago, I was driving a van with a $300,000 piece of equipment that's a biohazard product from Florida to Georgia. That's in my job description too, believe it or not. But that's exactly it. There's nothing that's not in your job description. Make copies, buy coffee, whatever. When you're a startup person, you're not too good for yourself. And if the idea is really good, you gotta go all in. You really do. And especially when you're in college, it's so much easier. You know, do it, get really passionate about it, and you know what? This is the time you can work those 16-hour days. You can, you know, you can sleep in a cardboard box, whatever the deal is. Because later on, when you're grown up and you have a mortgage and a family and this and that, it becomes a little more difficult, but this passion still exists. And like all these guys said, and honestly, Jonathan here said it best, don't deal with a-holes. Really don't. You'll see them, you can spot them. You go to a startup event, they walk around, oh, he raised $3 million. And of course he thinks he's greater than you all of a sudden. The great part about this panel, I feel like, look, we're all trying to do something, but none of us are billionaires here. We're all just at the ground level trying to make things happen. And hopefully they will happen, but I think that's why our advice is a little closer to home. I appreciate the talks of some of the more successful entrepreneurs, but you always have to take it with a grain of salt. It's a good motivating factor, but the relational aspects could be a little tough. So take this as what it is.
I think the other thing to take away from that is, if you're the asshole, it's not too late to change.
I just want to give another round of applause for our what you've all been waiting for. We have dinner ready in a few minutes downstairs, so go enjoy. Thank you.